Can you hear me, Joe?
Yeah, I can hear you, Rick.
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
Broke it.
Recording it.
Finance City Council for May 10th, 2021 is now in session. Roll call, please.
Council President, Mr. Arcaro,
Present?
Mr. Emery,
Here?
Mr. Goff,
Here.
Mr. Kozowski,
Here.
Mrs. Ledford. Here. Mrs. Floyd,
Here.
Mr. Moiseo,
Here.
City Manager, Mr. Hockaday. Director, Mr. Williams.
Here.
Law Director, Mr. Smith.
Here. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Here we have two presentations. Oh, meeting minutes. Let me go backwards a little bit. Have to approve the meeting minutes first. So the meeting minutes for April 26th. Are there any alterations or corrections? Nope. Okay, hearing none, is there a motion? Mr. Arcaro, make a
I'll
motion.
make a motion.
Second by Mr. Mosio.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Ledford. Yes. Mrs. McBoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes. Okay, the meeting minutes for April 26, 2021 have been approved. Now, we have a number of presentations this evening. And with us in council chambers tonight for an awards presentation. Our first is Kayla Farley, our Spartan of the Month. So Kayla, if you want to come over here, please.
I don't know what you're saying.
Unbox those.
Thank you. Yes, Certificate of Achievement, Spartan of the Month. The Spartan of the Month for May is Kayla Farley. Kayla is a ninth grade student at Conneaut High School. Her nominating teacher, Mr. Gabe Cellini, wrote, Kayla Farley is an excellent social studies student. During the portion of the season that was 100% remote, Kayla was able to persevere by leading classroom Zoom call discussions. She pays special attention to detail, and her classmates often look into her for guidance. She is kind and respectful to all of her teachers. In addition to being a great student, Kayla takes pride in her participation in extracurricular activities. My favorite thing about Kayla is how supportive she is of her family members within the district. She is not just a great student athlete, but a great sister. Signed, John J. Arcaro, Council President, Terry Moiseo, Council Member, and dated this 10th day of May, 2021.
Congratulations. And then as on behalf of the city council, that's for you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Would you introduce the happy?
My mom, Elena Davis.
And this other guy here?
This is Dr. Neal, I principal of my school.
Okay, very good. Congratulations once again.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Kayla. Congratulations, Mom.
Mr. Hill.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Oh, I wasn't looking.
She needs a copy. She needs a copy of this. Wait, you have it?
Thank you.
Our next presentation this evening is a proclamation for Nurses Week and a proclamation for the nurses at the hospital as well. So if Denise DiDonato from UH, I see you hiding back there, if you could come up, and Nichelle Blood from the Health Department, if you could come up, and Ms. O'Connell, if you could read the proclamation into the record.
Ready?
Go ahead.
Office of the Conneaut City Council proclamation. Whereas during the month of May, we celebrate National Nurses Week and National Hospital Week by honoring university hospitals outreach nursing staff, and volunteer nurses, and Conneaut Health Department nurses and staff. Whereas National Nurses Week is a week of national remembrance and appreciation from May 6th through May 12th for nurses across the country, commemorating and recognizing their selfless dedication to healing and tending to the sick and preventing illness and disease, often working long hours, earning substandard wages, and risking their health and those of their families to ensure the greater good for their community. Whereas National Nurses Week is commemorated from May 6th through May 12th each year, coinciding with the birthday of Florence Nightingale, May 12th, 1820, who is recognized as the founder and patron saint of nurses everywhere. Whereas during the past 15 months of the COVID-19 pandemic, more than 500,000 Americans have died and millions taken ill or hospitalized, and more than 3 million people have died worldwide. Whereas during the COVID-19 pandemic, nurses and other healthcare professionals have served on the front lines of our communities, risking their own lives and those of their families, treating millions of people with a deadly and highly infectious viral disease. Whereas nurses and medical staff at Conneaut UH Medical Facility and nurses and support staff of our own city health department have treated victims of the disease and worked long hours vaccinating thousands in our community and advising means of prevention. Whereas National Hospital Week is also celebrated from May 9th through the 15th, with the 2021 theme being Inspiring Hope Through Healing. University Hospitals Conneaut Medical Center and our City Health Department have played a huge role in the overwhelming need for COVID-19 prevention, treatment, care, and vaccine administration. Now, therefore, the Council of the City of Conneaut does hereby celebrate nurses and the vital roles they play in healthcare every day, but especially during Nurses Week. Council encourages the people of the City of Conneaut to observe National Nurses Week and National Hospital Week with the appropriate recognition, ceremonies, activities, and programs to demonstrate the importance of nurses to the everyday lives of patients. In witness whereof, I, John J. Arcaro, am here to set my hand in the seal of the city this 10th day of May, 2021.
So we appreciate your service, both of you groups, all of you, for your dedication to keeping our community healthy, all that you've done during the pandemic especially. So we really appreciate that. I want to
recognize you. Mr. Ledford also has something for you. And then Mr. Moiseo has one for each of your staff, which I hope you'll introduce. Whoever wants to go first.
Okay, Louise Cleveland, she's our Director of Nursing at the Health Department. Wendy Diego, she is our registrar, she has been helping us with scheduling for our COVID clinics. Rosie Robertson has also been one of our contracted LPNs and has helped with our vaccination clinics as well. The two others that can't be here today are Karen Schmeman and Grace Turry.
Very good.
And from the University Hospitals team, I have Denise Brown. She is the supervisor of community outreach, and she has she has helped in the COVID. Well, our whole entire community outreach team actually had to pivot during COVID. Obviously, there was not a whole lot of outreach going on, so they went and worked our med-surg nursing floors. So they cross-trained back to the floors. And we're able to provide support to the nursing staff early on in the pandemic, and then again in November when we experienced another surge. So they really worked outside of their normal scope of operation. And then when the opportunity came for the vaccination clinics, they all stepped in for vaccines. So I've got Denise Brown, I've got Dawn Dale, who everybody in Pontiac knows Dawn, all for wonderful reasons, and Lori Sliver as well. So this has been a very dynamic team that went above and beyond. Missing from this group today is Kelly McGinnis. She's been helping with the vaccination clinics, and then Paula Coble, who's also a nurse in Geneva at UH Geneva Medical Center, has also helped with vaccination clinics. So that's our team.
Very good.
Well, we're so happy. I mean, we're so proud that all of you guys are there, Kanya, and I can't imagine how we would have made it through this without you.
Thank you. We're very honored for this recognition. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate you all.
Thank you. Can we get a picture with that? Can we get a picture of them? Oh, thank you.
Hey, thank you once again. Go ahead and get your pictures taken.
Yeah. Let me sneak by. Let me sneak.
Did you want me?
Sure.
Will adjourn and leave us. There's two things that I want to point out is that University Hospitals donated 100% of their vaccine to the city health department clinics at no cost. All of the nurses and all of the wonderful people that you see sitting here have performed that to the community at no cost. And I don't think that there's been a time in recent history in humanity where you see such a generous collective team effort that's had such tremendous results. I think Conneaut as a community has led the county by heads and shoulders in terms of overall vaccines. And I know that has had a significant impact on local public health. And it is exactly the things that our health department is designed to do. I know it's the things that UH organizationally aspires to do on a regular basis. And I don't think it's totally out of line to say thank you and just what a wonderful collaboration. This is not something you see hardly anywhere in the state of Ohio or in this country where a hospital system and a community board of health have collaborated so closely and been so effective in doing so. And that only comes from the people on the front lines putting in the effort and that time and doing such a tremendous job. And I don't know if you want to share what those final numbers are as of today. I know they're not final numbers.
So as of today, we have been able to administer 5,406 vaccine. Obviously, I would like to thank UH Hospitals and their community outreach department. for their continued efforts to help get our community vaccinated. Your help has been really appreciated from the Pontiac City Health Department. Without you guys, I don't think we would have been able to accomplish what we have so far. So thank you very much for your help.
Okay, very good. Thank you all again. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
So, just to give you guys an update on our COVID numbers as of today, we just got these done. Right now, we're actively monitoring 8 active cases. It seems like a small number. We have a lot of quarantine individuals. As I'm sure you guys have heard or haven't heard, we did quarantine the softball and track team about 2 weeks ago. Those kids have already been released, but that was one of our big contact cases that we've had recently. Right now, we have a total of 813. That is from the beginning of April of last year. 2 individuals are currently in the hospital with our total hospitalizations at 81, with 779 of those individuals completely resolved. And our total death is at 26. What I kind of want to give you guys another update on, within the last month, we've had about 56 positive COVID cases, with the average age of those 56 being around 23. So I know that back in December, when I did give you guys an update on the average age, I think it was somewhere between 50 and 60. Unfortunately, I could not find that exact number. So we are starting to see cases drop in ages. The last 56, 18 of them have been between the ages of 30 and 39. And then other than that, I just want to thank you guys for your support with House Bill 110 and the resolution that you guys did pass. I know that the Senate had a meeting last Thursday, but I have not heard any new updates to this point. So I will keep you guys in the loop as of your hearings. That's all I have for you.
Definitely keep us updated on that. Can do anything else.
Michelle was able to join us on a call with Representative Sarah Fowler. And I believe she is committed to signing a letter opposing the consideration of the budgetary measure in 110 and extracting it out as a separate issue, meriting its own debate. So as of the time we spoke, she was leaning towards joining that letter of pulling it out of the operating budget bill for the state of Ohio. So, speaking up and articulating the importance of rural public health, I think is really important. And I think we're seeing a little bit of movement on this one. So.
I'm glad to hear it. Yeah. And again, like Mr. Arcaro said, if you can think of anything we can do to help, just let us know. We'll be happy to.
Okay, thank
Unless
you.
you guys have any questions.
I have one question. So when we talk about vaccines and where we stand with the Pfizer, I know Pfizer is not a vaccine that the Conneaut Health Department or UH has been carrying. We've carried the Moderna. What about the younger guidelines for 12 to 16?
So we haven't seen anything from the state yet where that has gone into effect where we can start administering vaccines for the 12 to 15-year-olds. If that does come into play, more than likely we will work with our school systems to either work with their summer programs so that we're able to actually target those kids at those summer programs so that we don't have to set up like a different clinic. Or we could have a clinic at the high school. I know that I've talked to Lori Riley about it, and we have kind of a couple different things working out in the mix, but as of right now, nothing has been said about when we will actually start being able to vaccinate those kids.
Do you have a feeling or a generic timeline of when do you think that might?
Probably within the next month, I'm thinking. It's not going to be before school is let out. I will tell you that.
And I imagine this is what type of vaccine?
The Pfizer vaccine,
So you can get that?
we can get it, we'll have to request it.
Will you need special refrigeration for that?
No, because the guidance for the vaccine has changed. it can be set in a freezer for up to 2 weeks.
Okay.
So as long as we use it within the 2 weeks in the freezer, we should be okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for coming out.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Have a great evening.
You too. Okay, moving on to citizen comments. Does anybody have any citizen comments this evening? Okay, hearing none. Communications.
I have one this evening. I have a notice from the Ohio Division of Liquor Control in regards to a new liquor permit for Gigolato Erie LLC at 348 West Main Road, Conneaut, Ohio. That is all.
Okay, does council have any communications? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to reports of our administration, beginning with the city manager, Mr. Hockaday.
Thank you, Council President Arcaro. There's a couple of things I do want to take a little bit of time discussing. And first amongst them is the dredging project. We have been waiting and waiting and waiting on the state of Ohio to allocate some additional funding. Right now, it's my understanding through ODNR's Coastal Management Office is we're in the process of finalizing our submission to the Ohio Controlling Board for an additional $1.9 million in Healthy Lake Erie Initiative dollars that will ultimately go to the capping and phase 1 construction of the dredging site. So I'm anticipating that closing out in the June Controlling Board meeting. So it would happen in this year's state fiscal year, which concludes June 30th. So we will be able to begin an implementation timeline for beginning of construction and commencement of a construction. Now, there's a couple ifs and buts in there, but right now that is the timeline I'm anticipating. We did have a joint meeting with ODNR's Coastal Management Office, the Ohio Lake Erie Commission, Ohio EPA, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers here last week for an update on our harbor. And, you know, we need to continue to proceed, and we need to continue to articulate the state's need to fully fund these projects, not only here in Conneaut, but as well as in ports of Fairport, Lorraine, Sandusky, and there's one more in there that do not have final funding solutions from the state. So it's kind of a team sport, and talking about the economic impact of these various ports. Just so you know, our port is responsible for annually about $6.2 billion in annual business revenue. And about 1.2 billion of that is represented as labor wages, supporting over 32,000 jobs, not just here in, obviously not in Conneaut, but in Pennsylvania, in Minnesota, and all the other 11 Great Lakes ports that are reliant on Conneaut's port. I don't think people realize how interconnected the Great Lakes ports are. And Conneaut, even though it's not a very public-facing port, is a very critical port for the United States of America. It produces about 3.2 million tons of steel out of Pittsburgh, which they're so proud of. They got the logos on the football helmets. All of that comes through Conneaut first. It is not accessible by another rail line. It's not accessible by another port. It is simply completely inefficient and ineffective to truck that material. So, you know, it's an important port, and I'm happy to, you know, help take this first step in getting the site prepped for a final construction that would ostensibly be in 2022. So there will be another state capital budget that would come out in March of 22. So we will be working towards that end, but we'll need to get our first hurdle cleared here with these additional dollars received from the state. Okay, so that's a big one. We are still pending on the NS bridge replacement over Conneaut Creek. We've had, I believe, our fourth harbor planning meeting. We also had a walkthrough of the area this last week. Thankfully, it was nice and dry and actually sunny that day. Pleasant surprise. But I really appreciate the participation, the ongoing participation of the businesses in the area. They've become a very effective work group in terms of being able to articulate some of the needs and some of the things that need to be corrected and what those possible solutions might be. So we're continuing to work on that, and I'm happy to share any updates council might require. I've been working with the Conneaut Port Authority and the Nature Conservancy. The Nature Conservancy received a grant to do some invasive species removal. And particularly we're looking at the southern edge of the sandbar, which seems to be kind of polluted with some invasive species such as Phragmites and a couple species of willows, which are not indigenous, not native to this area. And the Conneaut Port Authority is going to be working with the Nature Conservancy on invasive species mitigation for the sandbar area. So we want to have a balance, I think, of both active and passive areas, some wetlands that are nice and worthy of conservation, but also worthy of mitigation from some of these invasive species. So we had an on-site ODOT meeting, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time on that. There was an ODOT. They finally did their PIO notice. They're looking at May 13th or May 12th, excuse me, as that shutdown date to westbound traffic. So the one that they keep sending out, it says closure on it. If you look more closely at it, it says westbound traffic. So from the area of the plaza or the city cemetery, the east side of the city cemetery to Parish Road will be one-way traffic. So you will always be able to go eastbound towards the hospital from the west side. If you want to head westbound, you can take Parish Road North up to Lake Road and head that way, or you can head out south. You can take Center Road if you're trying to capture some local roads. Obviously, those are not posted truck routes. That's not for trucks. But for local traffic, they can take Center Road out to Daniels and head west. They can also take Route 7 out to I-90 and head west. So you still have multiple options on heading westbound from that juncture. And you may always, and throughout the duration of this project, you will always be able to head eastbound. If you're having problems, if you live in that area, or if you're a business in that area and you have problems or a specific issue, you can contact my office and I will be glad to give you the number of the manager from Marucci and Gaffney, who's the contractor. He's been very open. He wants all issues brought to him so he can assist in resolving them. We realize that this is going to be disruptive, and we will do the best that we can with it to get it done and over more quickly so we can all get back to normal on movements along Route 20. We know this is going to be difficult, but there's still a way to get from the east side to the west side. It just won't be headed westbound on Route 20. So we're in understanding of this. We're anticipating this shutdown from May 12th to the middle of October. So depending on how construction goes, that could go faster, that could go slower. They don't want to keep it closed any additional days that they don't need to. And this is for the safety of the workers in that area. This is a large project. It will include not only the replacement of the roadway, but it will also include all the stormwater structures. And they are quite deep going through that curve. At the peak of that curve, the stormwater structures are over 20 feet deep. It is incredibly sandy. There will be trench boxes, so it's difficult without constraining it to one lane to make it safe for those workers to work in that deep of a trench. So this is a big project, and I appreciate everybody's patience. If there are problems, again, you can call my office. You can also, we'll give you information if you're an affected property owner or business owner in that area the number. You will always have access to your property. We can always make sure that you can get in and out during these times. It just might be a little more difficult, and give yourself a little extra time. Any questions about that?
If you could just reiterate again the area that this affects.
So this will be the area approximately where the new Mexican restaurant is in the plaza, the old Perkins restaurant, to Parish Road.
And I'd just like to say, I know that this, may be a little bit difficult, but it's for the betterment of the town. The road was really bad. It needs extensive work, and this is the time to do it. We don't want anybody to avoid going to those businesses over there, like in the Save-A-Lot Plaza, the new Mexican restaurant. Just go a different route. Please go to those businesses. We want them to be successful, but just go around.
And they met from Industry Road to Industry Road to Gore Road.
So the area of the full depth repair is from, so this shutdown is only going to affect the area of full depth repair. So that means we're the $4.8 million that's indicated here on this is from the area of the Mexican restaurant, Perkins, to Parish Road, because it takes everything out. It's new curb,
Resurfacing.
It's everything.
It's everything.
It's everything.
Right,
It is
okay.
the underground for the
Excuse
road.
me. Yeah, the way this read, I thought,
Yeah.
sounds like you're stopping at Kephas. Nothing between Kephas and Gore.
No, and not at this time. So, what's going to happen next year, and the reason why there was going to be full resurfacing,
But then they
Right.
took it out.
because Dominion has some assets that they're attempting to get out of the way. So, they have, they're wrapping up. The reason why Marucci and Gaffney was supposed to start May 1st, and they got delayed because the gas pipeline work took longer than it should have. There were some material delays and other things that led into that. So they did that replacement first. So once this road is intact, there shouldn't be any reason to go back into this road. It's got a new sewer line in it. It'll have a new water line in it. It'll
Gas line.
have a new gas line in it. So hopefully it'll sit there for another 20 years, not needing another dollar. The
Brand new.
resurfacing areas, which will be the balance of Route 20. So everything that hasn't been paved to date will be paved in 2022. So from Parish Road east to the Viaduct, Veterans Memorial Bridge, over Route 20, that will be resurfaced. And then the area west of this, from the western boundary all the way over to Industry Drive, the Amboy Bridge that goes into Kingsville on Route 20. So the balance of Route 20 will be resurfaced, but that will be pushed into 22. And the only reason for that is Dominion will be starting a project this week from Stadium Drive to Harbor on Route 20, replacing all their gas lines in that area. They are working on preliminary engineering for their problems west of this point that they will either be doing later this fall or early next spring in anticipation of this resurfacing. So and the other reason everybody's going to say, well, didn't they just do a gas line in Route 20 5 years ago? There are two sets of gas lines in Route 20. There's the high pressure main that carries all the gas for the entire community. That was the 2.5 mile high pressure replacement that they did about 5 years ago. So that's a 8-inch high pressure 500 PSI gas line in the middle of the road. This is the residential stuff that carries about 5 pounds in pressure and serves all the individual homes and businesses in the area. So it's a little slower because it's tie-ins to everybody's everybody's house. So there's a lot of work that is represented in those low pressure lines. So that's what Dominion's doing right now, and they're anticipating commencing later this month east of Parish Road, that Stadium to Harbor area.
So this is the Route 20 project is a single contractor doing the whole project.
It is a single contractor.
So he won the bid. And the question that I've been getting is why can't they do the west end of the city up to the full depth, the mill and fill at the same time? Is it an asset thing or
It's
They don't
gas.
have enough people.
No, it's just gas line. They got the gas line to replace west of this as well.
Okay, so they're be doing that as well.
Yep. And ODOT contracts, understand that while we pay a portion of it and we use local grants and everything to pay for some of these improvements, it is still a state route. And even though we have a task shared responsibility, in this case, it was a city designed ODOT let project. So we performed the design on it, and they do the letting, the awarding, contracting. They also do the construction administration that the city actually pays for. So those are ODOT employees that will be doing the inspecting and the construction administration of this project. Once a contract is let, there is very little opportunity to shift things forward and shift things back. It is a very regimented process. But the real answer is the contract's not the problem. The problem is that there's still some Dominion gas lines west of the Perkins restaurant all the way over to the Amboy line that will need to be replaced. And it's in the roadway, and we want to give them that opportunity to get it out of the way before we come into resurfacing.
Okay. Yeah, just so the citizens understand that you're going to have to wait another year for the west side to be taken care of. So. Okay. You have anything else?
The other new one that I want to throw on there is the Buffalo Street sewer boring project. We're going to bore new or upgrade the sanitary sewer line that goes under Buffalo Street. This is in the area just north of the library, between the library and the Supertread building along Buffalo Street. It will go under those tracks. There's an existing line there, and it was part of the capital budget. It is in final engineering at this point, and we expect it to let an award and go to construction at some point after September 1st. So you'll start seeing that little update on there and where that one, the status of that project is going to be. Both of the contracts for the Route 20 Waterline Phase 2 as well as Chestnut Phase 3 were awarded by council. We have signed one of those contracts and it is being bound. The other one is signed. The Chestnut Street also involves some CDBG dollars for which the county commissioners also have to go through a formal award process for. So that one's been signed and it's been sent up to the county. So it'll be on their agenda once the county commissioners authorize it, and then it will go into construction. It has a completion date of August 15th. And just a quick update on the Clark Street water tower. It's worth mentioning. One of the notices that we got there's a failing drain screen that was very inaccessible about a third of the way down from the top of the tower. We hired a company with some apparently very brave contractors that used a really elaborate rappelling system to rappel down the side of the tower and actually fix that. So we will get an immediate letter from the Ohio EPA saying we've corrected that deficiency on the tower. So I want to let you know that that happened and that will resolve that violation issue for the distribution system. Other than that, I do not have anything further unless there are questions.
Okay, on that Clark Street one, was that contractor working for the,
With that,
that contractor was hired by us, working for the city? I did receive a question about their technique.
about their what?
Their technique.
Oh, well, they have full rappelling gear. All they work on are towers. So, I know they do a ton of work for the county on their towers as well. So,
Okay. Any other questions for the city manager? Okay, move on to the finance director, Mr. Williams.
I have no report this evening.
Okay. Move on to the law director, Mr. Smith.
No report.
All right. Okay, we'll move on to our reports of standing committees. Does anybody have a committee report? Okay, hearing none. Liaison reports? And hearing none there either.
I'll just make a reminder about the joint meeting between the Board of Education and City Council, May 19th, high school cafeteria at 6 PM.
Okay.
And then also the Utilities Committee is invited to join the Planning Committee's meeting, May 25th at 6 PM.
All right. Okay, move on to our ordinances and resolutions for this evening. And on the table, we have 8820, which will remain on the table. And also on the table, we have 1921, which will be coming off of the table. You want to
Sorry. An ordinance to amend chapter 110 of the City of Conneaut codified ordinances governing fees and not declaring an emergency.
Okay, Mr. Smith.
Yes, this is the latest and greatest version of this ordinance. We have added the police inspection fee for the golf carts. We have gone, there's other ordinances, we can talk about those as we come up to them, but there's duplications and contrary provisions throughout the code, and we've been trying to weed them out one at a time. So there's a couple of ordinances more for you tonight that deal with that. But I think the 110 one is ready to go for you.
Okay. All right, are there any questions or concerns with ordinance 1921? Okay, Mr. Moiseo.
I'd like to move ordinance 19-21 to second reading.
Okay, ordinance 1921 has been moved to a second reading. And we have one ordinance in third reading.
Ordinance 2221, an ordinance to amend the 2021 budget through appropriations and fund and interfund transfers attached here to and marked Exhibit A.
There seems to be a duplication on this because the ordinance on 30-21, I think, does the same thing.
Okay,
I don't know how you'd like to proceed, but
what are we going to do with 22 then?
well, why don't you, since
Leave it where it is?
2221 is already there, why don't you act on 2021 and then you can, we'll just cross out 3021 as a scrivener's error.
Okay. All right, Mr. Williams.
Okay. We have a few items that we're going to amend the budget on. For the general fund, we have an addition of $15,000 for outside legal fees for the East Side Economic Development Project. I had talked to council before about in the police department, they had an asset sell to Atwells and they wanted to reappropriate those funds to vehicle maintenance and patrol equipment, $3,500 each. The big one is engineering, and that's out of the General Services Department. There's a gas line inspection for Route 20. That's going to be around $75,000, but it is reimbursable by the East Ohio Gas, or the gas company is going to reimburse the city for those inspection services. And then we're going to put $25,000 for port grant engineering. So the total general fund increase will be $122,000, 75 of which will be reimbursable to the city. The federal forfeiture fund, those are forfeiture monies that will be used to purchase stop sticks and anything else that the police department may need that meets those requirements under the federal forfeiture program. Special assessment debt fund, there's a $500 appropriated for county auditor deductions. That was the real estate tax settlement that I had talked about before. We didn't anticipate any further collections, but there were some delinquent collections. So we do have to appropriate to cover those costs. In the sewer treatment fund, we had a very a sizable refund requested by a citizen. And so we're trying to replenish those refund lines in both the water and sewer. And then the last one is the funding of the meters. This is $16,000 to replace non-functioning meters in the water department. So the total in the water is $17,000. The grand total of all of them together is $147,300.
Okay. Any questions for the finance director?
President Arco, two things. You'd asked me on the stop sticks if that was enough to purchase a set for each cruiser, and the answer from the chief of police was yes. For all the cruisers that carry them, it will replace them. The water meters, this is 16 on top of what we traditionally appropriated, but ostensibly we are playing catch up from last year, as we did not go into any homes or really replace any meters. So our distribution manager has requested additional funds on top of what we traditionally appropriate for dead meters because we are playing catch up for 2020. So I just wanted to give you that additional explanation.
Okay, thanks. Okay, anything else on ordinance 2221? Okay, Mr. Moiseo, you're up again.
I'd like to make a motion to act on ordinance 2221.
A motion to act on ordinance 2221. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Ledford.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah?
Yes.
Mr. Kozeski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2221 is passed. Move on to our first reading ordinances, and we have 6 remaining to consider in first reading. And we will begin with ordinance 2621.
An ordinance to amend section 1369.03 of the City of Conneaut Codified Ordinances governing issuance of demolition permits and not declaring an emergency.
Hey, Mr. Hockaday.
So these are tied to the fee ordinance. So I guess there's a little bit of a decision upon council if you're putting the one on the table back into a second reading. I don't know if you want to place all the subsequent fee ordinances that are related to it also in that second reading. If you want to consider them all at the same time, I think that would be appropriate.
Smart.
I also want to thank Kyle Smith. We were just going to update fees, and this has gone well beyond my wildest dreams of updating the fees, and probably Kyle's worst nightmare. So
My worst nightmare is what's still in the code.
Yeah. So this has turned into more of an endeavor than we ever really hoped. But I do appreciate the law office and the zoning's office patrol back through the entire codified ordinances of the city to kind of clean up some of these historical mistakes.
Okay. All right. We will move ordinance 2621 to a second reading. Move on to ordinance 2721.
An ordinance to delete section 1379.04 of the City of Conneaut Codified Ordinances governing escrow for vacant property and not declaring an emergency.
Okay, and again, that will be moved to a second reading as well. Okay, ordinance 2821.
An ordinance to delete section 1137.13B of the City of Conneaut Codified Ordinances governing zoning fees, charges, and expenses and not declaring an emergency.
And again, that will be moved to a second reading as well. We move on to ordinance 2921.
An ordinance to authorize the city manager to execute a gas line improvement agreement between the city of Conneaut and the East Ohio Gas Company Dominion for improvements to the State Street gas line from Harbor Street to Stadium Avenue and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Hockaday.
I was trying to pull that up real quick, but we've talked about it and I've shown it on council before, which is the area from Harbor to Stadium along Route 20. There are also some additional areas on Main and Liberty that will also have some replacement work as part of their PIR project. Once we reached out to Dominion about this project, they were able to advance multiple gas line projects, including the work that they're doing between Parrish and Gore now. I think it'll make for a better product in the end, and that way we don't have somebody coming in and cutting our streets after just resurfacing them. I appreciate Dominion doing that. Per this agreement, this allows for the city to have an inspector present. The budget appropriation, which council just authorized, includes some additional consulting engineering fees for us to make an engineer or a inspector present throughout the entire time during this project. So they are going to be affecting possibly some public assets. Mostly in this case, it is going to happen under sidewalks and curb ramps, and the majority of this project will happen by directional boring. But that being said, we have plenty of underground and buried utilities throughout this area, so it provides for the city to be reimbursed on all of these engineering expenses and inspection expenses that we would incur. So that's why we have these agreements, and we do these permits by agreement with Dominion to make sure that we're protecting public assets like sidewalks and storm drains and sewer lines and water lines, and to make sure everything's put back the right way. We did provide details and drawings on how we want our sidewalks to look, how we want curbs and all public assets to be restored. And restoration is part of their commitment, even with the forthcoming state project that might replace some of the sidewalk aprons. Dominion will have to replace them as well. So.
Okay. Any questions on ordinance 2921? If not, is there a motion to proceed?
I would like to declare ordinance 29-21 an emergency.
There's a motion to declare ordinance 2921 an emergency. Is there a second?
James McVoy.
I will second.
Thank you, Mrs. McVoy.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Ledford?
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Hey, Mr. Emery, the emergency has been declared.
Thank you. I would like to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 29-21.
The motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 2921. Is there a second?
Second.
Rick Goss seconds.
You?
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Hey, Mr. Emery, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to act on ordinance 29-21.
There's a motion to act on ordinance 2921. Is there a second?
Rick Goss seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Goff.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
A ordinance 2921 is passed. Okay, Mr. Smith, if you could just clarify Are we going to amend the numbers for these next two or?
I think we'll just mark it up void scrivener's error
Okay,
because it's the same thing that was done before.
okay, thank you. All right, we'll move on then to ordinance 3121.
An ordinance to authorize the city manager to enter into a property lease with Huntington Public Capital Corporation for the financing of 2 pickup trucks in the amount of $56,313.60, which shall be used by the Conneaut Port Authority and declaring an emergency.
Okay, so who would like to talk about that? Mr. Smith or Mr. Williams or Mr. Hockaday?
I think Mr. Smith spent a lot of time on this
Okay,
one.
Mr. Smith?
All right, so
Your court.
3121 and 3221 go together and should be passed or moved to a second reading, preferably passed together. 3121 is it's a lease purchase agreement, kind of a master lease purchase agreement that the city council passed in December of 2020. And then what happens is, as you go along, you kind of add to it, and this is one of those additions. So there's 2 trucks, a Ford F-150 and a Ford 250 that the Port Authority needs. And the city has agreed to put that under its master lease. The title will be in the name of the Port Authority. The Port Authority will make the payments on this for the next 5 years, beginning next year, I believe. And the city will still be ultimately responsible for the payment of the vehicles if there should be a default, which I don't think is likely.
Okay, so you said 2 things there. Passing together or move to second. So which would you prefer?
I said I preferred passing them together.
Okay. All right, are there any questions on ordinance 3121? If not, is there a motion to proceed?
I'll make a motion to declare 3121 an emergency.
There's a motion to declare ordinance 3121 an emergency. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Ledford.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gall?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Hey, Mr. Moiseo, the emergency has been declared.
We'll make a motion to waive the 3 reading rule on 3121.
The motion to suspend a 3 reading rule on ordinance 3121. Is there a second?
Rick Goss seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Gah.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gall?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Hey, Mr. Moiseo, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
Make a motion to act on 31-21.
So motion to act on ordinance 3121. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Ledford.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gall?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 3121 has passed. Move on to ordinance 3221.
An ordinance to authorize the city manager to assign the city's interest in a lease purchase agreement with Huntington Bank to the Conneaut Port Authority for a Ford F-150 and a Ford F-250 and declaring an emergency.
Okay, as you know, this is the companion to 3121. So is there a motion to proceed?
I'll make a
Sorry.
motion.
Let Tom do it. Go ahead, Tom.
It's all yours, Tom.
Thank you. I'll make a motion to declare 3221 an emergency.
There's a motion to declare ordinance 3221 an emergency. Is there a second?
Angel McVoy
Rick-
seconds.
Thank you, Ms. McVoy.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Ah,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Hey, Mr. Kozeski, the emergency has been declared.
I'll make a motion to waive the 3 reading rule on ordinance 3221.
Motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 3221. Is there a second?
Rick Goss second.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Goff.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Hey, Mr. Kozeski, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
Thank you. I move that we act on 3221.
Motion to act on ordinance 3221. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Ledford.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 3221 has passed. That concludes our ordinances for this evening. We'll now move on to unfinished and old business. Mr. Hockaday, I have a couple of things. First is, can you give an update on Chestnut Street at the school?
The contractor's been notified of the outstanding work and we're waiting on their response.
Okay. And then if you could give an update on the recycling situation on Clark Street.
So we're looking for a date from the county when the contractor can move their bins over to the East Side Industrial Park. We have a date, we'll post signs on the transfer date from those bins to be moved to the industrial park. And then they will only be accessible during those times at which the compost center is staffed, which is that Monday, Wednesday, Saturday schedule as the compost center is regularly open. So that way we have somebody, a physical person there to monitor people's activity, to deter any illegal dumping or just overloading issues that are present there. My discussion with the county in terms of making that available 5 days a week in terms of staffing and providing additional staffing dollars from the solid waste district. The city of Conneaut, just based on its overall recycling load, is over 50% of their annual budget. The reality is we're much too large of a community to be relying on bins, and that curbside recycling should be implemented. However, in our present configuration, curbside recycling is not really an option.
Okay.
I might have missed that when you first started. What's the date? What are we looking at?
I don't
here?
have a final date from them yet. I've requested a final date for the movement of the bins from the current Clark Street location to join the other ones that are already posted in the industrial park. So now they'll all be in the industrial park.
That's, do you off the top of your head know approximately how many bins that is? It's like 16 or something like that?
Yeah, I think there's at least 12 at Clark Street. There might be a few more than that, and I believe there's already 6 out at the industrial park. So there's already a complement of them in the industrial park property, but they're all going to.
Okay.
And that produces over 50% of the county's solid waste budget for recycling. In
We
just
do.
the city of Conneaut, yes. We are much too large of a community to be using drop-off bins.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else for unfinished and old business? Hearing none, moving on to miscellaneous business.
Mr. Hockaday, we had a water line break over on Clay Street. When are they going to come back and do a patch on it? Last I looked, They hadn't fixed it, patched the roads.
I don't know, but I can ask our distribution manager when that'll be.
Okay, I'd appreciate it.
I'll follow up and find out for you.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else for miscellaneous business? Okay, hearing none. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a
I'll
motion.
make a motion.
Tom, is there a second?
Second.
Second,
You got it.
third, fourth, fifth.
Mr. Carroll,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Gah,
Yes.
Mr. Kozeski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Okay, the meeting for May 10th, 2021 is adjourned. Thank you all.
Night,
Thank you.
everybody.
Night.
Good night.